I'm Cameron Strang, and welcome to Unedited. My guest today is author Tyler Reagin, who you may also know as the head of Christian leadership organization Catalyst. Now, before I tell you about today's conversation, I want to mention a little behind-the-scenes note about last week's episode. It was a conversation with Josh Tillman, otherwise known as indie artist Father John Misty. I recorded that conversation about a year and a half ago as part of the relevant cover story we did on him. At the time, we didn't have plans for even doing this podcast. In fact, how captivating that full conversation was is actually what prompted the relevant team to push me to do this show. We thought, man, if we could bring these full conversations to our audience, it reveals so much more than an article or soundbite ever could. It really was the catalyst for launching Unedited. Unfortunately, because airing the full conversation was never really in our plans when we did that interview, Josh went places that he probably wouldn't have had he known it'd all be heard. So, fast forward 18 months, and we release the conversation. It's stuff that he hadn't thought about or said in a very long time, and all of a sudden, the public is reacting to it. He freaked out. Josh's label emailed around 11:30 at night, the day we released it, and asked us if we'd pull the episode out of respect for Josh. He was in a very different place 18 months ago and regretted probably some of what the conversation brought up. And while, yes, it was all on the record, we're not in the business of trying to out people or play gotcha journalism. I want this platform to be a vehicle for guests to open up and share their stories and hearts without any sort of fear that it'll be misconstrued. So if Josh doesn't want a late 2017 conversation released in 2019 as though it's his current thoughts, I'll respect that. So we pulled the show. Some of you downloaded it already and heard it before we yanked it. You now have a collector's item. Don't worry, what happened last week won't happen again. All the conversations we're bringing you on Unedited from this point forward will be fresh, current, new interviews, and the person will absolutely know the entire thing is going to be heard. Which brings me to this week's guest, Tyler Reagin. Tyler's in an interesting season. A few years ago, when he took over Catalyst, he inherited an organization built around filling arenas with pastors. A big arena conference is a model that is shrinking. There are so many other ways to get content and resources these days. Spending hundreds of dollars to go to an event is an increasingly hard ask. So, for the last couple of years, Tyler's undertaken the very difficult tasks of assessing and reshaping the culture at Catalyst, while also tearing down the business model, dreaming them both up all over again from the ground up, and then pursuing those plans, while keeping the current model moving. He's taken the organization from being owned by investors trying to maximize profits to Catalyst being a standalone, nonprofit organization with a mission and heart more focused on ministry than profitability. If you've ever had to lead a huge pivot in a business, you know how hard that is. But even in relationships, ourselves or other major life transitions, fundamentally changing things, making them healthy and thriving in a very new way is hard and scary. And we talk about that in the conversation you're about to hear. Tyler also has a new book out called The Life-Giving Leader. It shares his unique heart for leaders and his own leadership style. And even though he's a Georgia Bulldog, I like Tyler a lot. And after hearing this conversation, I think you will too. Here's my conversation with Tyler Reagin, Unedited. How's the book going?
I have no idea.
Really?
For me, it's a leadership book. So it's not a book that as soon as it comes out, everybody's rushing. Like, everybody looks at Amazon and goes, oh, I need that book. Mm-hmm. It's one of those ones that you hope somebody reads and they go, man, I want to take my team through this or I want to, get some for the staff. So it went great the first few weeks. So I don't know. I don't know how you know. Like, it is kind of, my agents have told me don't get on Amazon Author Central and just keep watching because that's just not, it's not healthy. No, it's not healthy. So, and honestly, for me, it's new, it's a new process, and I just.
Do you like writing books?
I prayed that I would, because I made a 4.20 in the SAT in English, so it's not like this was my career path.
Right.
And I just, as I started the project 2 years ago, I was like, you know what, Lord, I just want to enjoy this. And I did. I actually enjoyed it a lot, so much so that I'm about to start on project number 2. So I really actually, every draft I've ever done in my entire life, the first draft was the last draft. Now you're in the writing, you write for a living, you edit for a living. So but for me, that was it. When I turned into paper at seminary, here it is, it's done, complete, turn it in. So I knew one of the things I was most excited about was having a team of editors and a team that would help make it better. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened. It got better.
So you weren't possessive over it. You were thankful for the
No, and I think you've known me long enough. Like I don't operate that way in general.
Yeah.
So I definitely didn't over that, because to me, I felt like they were trying to help make it better. But I was protective of it. I was, you know what? The thing I was the most protected over was the cover.
Really?
Yeah. Because
why?
Because if I were to throw out 10 leadership books right here on the coffee table, what would they look like?
Big, bold titles.
Exactly.
With,
one color, colors, maybe two color, and font. That's it.
And some sort of like coined phrase.
Right.
The so-and-so effect.
Sure.
Or so-and-so leadership. Or, Yeah.
So for me, I just didn't want that. And Catalyst has always been known for 19 years as a little bit, want to be early. We're not necessarily the most innovative, but I would say we're early adopters on a lot of stuff, and we reach a younger generation. So I wanted it to feel that way. I wanted to have a little bit. And then me personally, I love the outdoors. I love, and this title of life-giving leader, life-giving has the metaphor that runs throughout the book is a river. And so I wanted something. So anyway, I told the publisher, I said, let us design 6, my team. We had never designed a cover before. Corinne had never done any of that. And I was like, let's just try it. And so we put 6 in front of them, and, both my agent and all of them were like, I was like, well, they were like, you need more of that. I was like, nobody's ever told us best practices. I didn't realize that if you put it on a coffee table, it needs to be able to be read from 20 yards or 20 feet away, so you can read the cover title.
Yeah,
but it also has to be
to the table at Barnes & Noble.
But it also has to be good enough that on a thumbnail on Amazon, you can read and make out what the cover is. Well, we don't know that, but now we do. Where does the forward go? Should it go on the top? Should it go on the bottom? Like those kind of things. So we played with those. We turned in 6. They didn't love them. They're like, can we design 6? And I was like, sure. And they were exactly what we described a few minutes ago, like big font, whatever.
Why 6? Isn't that the devil's number?
Well, we only did 6 and 6. We didn't do 6 and 6 and 6.
My breakfast this morning at Chick-fil-A, if you get the number 3 with Florida state tax, the total is $6.66.
Really?
And I'm really
they
bothered by
that.
At Chick-fil-A.
At Chick-fil-A. They should fix that.
It's just the number 3, no add-ons.
So they ended up coming back with 6, and I was like, I kept fighting for this one. And I knew it wasn't perfect yet, but I liked it. I liked the look of it. And it was going to match more of, like, we redid my website and all these other things. It was more of an outdoor river, like, kind of thing. And so they were like, I think this was their last ditch effort. And they were like, okay, let's do this. Let's do a crowd survey and see. And so they picked their 2 favorites of theirs. We put ours sandwiched in between it, after we had done some work learning some of these best practices and made it better. And then sure enough, it wasn't even close. Like, the audience picked ours.
So whose idea was it to send the box with the book out to, I guess some of the people you're connected with, to say, hey, here's my book, here's an early edition, Whose idea was it to fill the box with moss? Which got all over my kitchen floor.
Okay, that was a team effort.
Uh-huh.
We wanted something in there that represented life, like greenery, that kind of thing.
And that gets everywhere.
It did. Most people, it's better than if Andy Downs sent you a box, because it'd have confetti.
Yeah, or sequins.
So for me, it was that.
You open the box lid, it just explodes with confetti all over your house.
Yeah, so, a lot of people said the same thing, but here's the thing about those boxes. We get them all the time. Sure. You get them, I get them. My thing was, I knew a couple of things. One, I don't want to send something where everybody goes, that was a waste of money. You open it, you're like, God, you spent how much on that water bottle or this, that, and the other. The only way those really are effective, in my opinion, is you
sending a box full of moss and dirt. Really?
I didn't think so?
I didn't have the thought,
that.
wow, he spent a lot of money on this.
Shut up. But you did think, well, I get it, Yeah. My other thing is it works if you open it up and you want to show other people.
Yeah.
That's to me when that's a win. Or if there's something in there, we put that little wooden card that says when life flows, influence grows. That feels like something you could put somewhere or use. I'm not saying you do, but anyway, so we just kind of wrestled with what are a few things we could do, a couple, a bracelet and those kind of things. But the moss, when you have a designer helping you think through that, her idea was the moss. And
so you have a newly redesigned Tyler Reagin website.
Correct.
You have a brand new author writing career. Are you trying to become famous?
No.
Well, I mean, then why do all this?
Because, man, it took me 4 years to get into a place of being okay writing.
Right.
The number one thing for me, Cameron, and you and I have become friends, so you would know. I think you would know this. If not, we need to have a conversation at the game tonight so that you can be honest with me. But I never came to Catalyst for that reason.
Yeah, I know.
And that's why it took me a long time to write a book. I never wanted anybody to think I was there because of that.
Right.
Over the first 4 years of leading it, it was between my wife and then a lot of close friends and then my team going, hey, you've been teaching this stuff for years. It's time to write it. The thing that took me over the hurdle was a friend of mine and he looked at me, he said, why haven't you written something? I said, well, I've been thinking about it. He said, if for any other reason, I think you would understand this too, do it for your 2 boys. Like, write everything you believe about this subject for your 2 boys to have. Now, the publisher obviously wants me to sell more than 2 books. But for me, that was the final kind of, okay, I can do that. And it was another realization of, and I talk in the book about having confidence in our calling, like actually being confident that God's called us to do what we're doing. I had to get over that hurdle and finally start going, if I'm going to lead a leadership organization, creating content should be a part of that equation. But it's not why. Like, I do it because I want to help leaders, and I feel like it's helpful. What's been encouraging is I've had a lot of people message me through my website or social media asking if there's a study guide because they really do want to take their teams through it, which has been really encouraging to me. So now I have to create a study guide.
I didn't know you before Catalyst. Where did you come from?
North Point. I worked with Andy for over a decade.
What did you do there?
Service programming. So
what does that mean?
Production, music, guest services, basically the Sunday experience for adults. That's what we were in charge of.
So how did you go from there to running Catalyst?
So I had been producing Catalyst for 3 years as a contractor. So when I was still with the church, it was Brownsbridge. I had started 2 churches with North Point campuses. And so while I was there, I also would produce Drive, which is North Point's big church leadership conference. And I think I produced the first 5 Drive conferences.
Were you on stage though?
Mm-mm.
So you were the guy behind the guy behind the scenes.
I was on the headset making it happen. Now, before I came to the church, I used to teach all the time. I was a worship leader in small churches and while I was in seminary and those kind of things. So, but I always had this, my degree from the University of Georgia is technology education. So really my background was more production.
Okay, then let's go there. You're going technology and production.
Right.
How did you start speaking early in your career?
I've always been pretty comfortable on stage, whether it's like
but there's a lot of people getting production tech degrees who wouldn't go, hey, I'm going to do this sermon at my church.
Yeah, it was just that was a uniqueness of mine. I love teaching, and that's why I was going to get an education degree because I love being in front of people and moving them from A to B. That's what I love doing, inspiring them, whatever that looks like. And so I did it a ton in seminary. I spoke all the time, and then when I came to North Point, because it's such a big church, you really specialize in a space. And so I preached one Sunday at Brownsbridge, and the process about killed me because I'd never gone through that kind of process of content development.
I know nothing about it. What is the process?
But just under the tutelage of Andy Stanley, I mean, that's
not intimidating at all.
No, when you're on the stage with him or on his, on a stage at one of his campuses, like it wasn't his fault. I just got uncomfortable because it wasn't the way that I prepared or delivered. Like for me to have the plasma there, no notes, those kind of things. Even in seminary,
is that the rule? No notes?
It's not the rule. Well, that is the rule if you're preaching on Sunday. Yeah, you got to be. And I don't know
notes. Oh, wow.
Yeah, you just have to know.
I know nothing about pastoring or preaching, so I would have thought notes were part of it, but
no,
not there.
It's a preparation thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty. And what they've really systematized now and figured out is how to use the plasma as your notes and be able to they have a screen in the back so you can see what's coming next on the plasma. So in other words, Andy's whole theory of communication is you study, you prepare so that you can just stand up and you communicate everything about that part of the sermon, just verbatim and natural, and then move on to the next piece. Like, you know what I mean? It's a comfortable thing. It wasn't comfortable for me, and it took so much out of my job to just take the time to do that. And so I think it actually put a little bit of insecurity in me that I had never had before when it came to being on stage and teaching.
So he would prepare for a sermon. How many hours in a week would you guess?
Andy?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Because he's been doing thousands of them. So
I honestly don't know how much in a week. I mean, people would say how far in advance. I mean, we would work 6 months out on what's the series in 6 months.
Right.
And then he would start building it. He was usually fully done with series 7 weeks out.
Oh, okay.
And so I don't know. That's why I didn't know.
He would write a sermon or prepare a sermon in how long? A day?
No, it takes longer than that. But his study.
But he would sit down, shut the door, and write it for multiple days. Or
for sure.
I can imagine, like, I've been asked to speak from time to time, and I've always said no, but not because like I'm afraid of a mic or that I couldn't deliver content, but I don't have the time it would take to,
to
prepare the thing that would be worth that platform and still keep all the plates spinning.
Yep.
You know, so I just go pick what's my priority.
Yep.
And frankly, thank you for the invitation to your 3,000 person event.
Right.
But I would rather work with my team and reach a couple million people these days. Right. You know? And so it's like, oh, well, you only have one life. You only have one. You can only spend a minute one way, you know?
Sure.
It's like...
When I even developed a coaching business on the side of coaching leaders, I'd go into organizations and do leadership training for teams and work on, you know, what is their self-awareness as a team? What does that look like? And so I love being in front of people and speaking when it comes to leadership and those sorts of things. So
you were doing that and then doing the production, so you got asked to speak that
I would just do it. Not at Catalyst, I didn't speak for a long
not Catalyst. I'm
time.
talking
back at the church.
North Point,
yeah, because I'd come from seminary. I mean, even in seminary, I had one of the most kind of well-known seminary preaching professors. And when I went...
Who's that?
Dr. Haddon Robinson. So
he's famous.
Yeah. I know you don't know. But his textbooks used at most of the kind of DTS, Denver, Fuller, those places. But he was our professor. And so they would make you do these like 5-minute mini sermons, and then the whole class would just kind of judge it and talk about it. It was brutal. And about 6 people went before me, and the first 6, he would finish, and he was known for not like beating around the bush. He's from New York, he would just shoot people straight. And the first 6 people, he'd said to him, he's like, hey, your content's fantastic, but you got to work on your delivery. And here's some thoughts on your delivery. So then I went, and he goes, wow. He said, your delivery's fantastic. Content's not any good, but your delivery's fantastic. But he looked at me, he said, you know, but you can learn content. And his point was, there are people that are natural when it comes to speaking. And in terms of on stage, they're comfortable. What I've always had to work on to camera was the content side of things. What do I have to say? What am I trying to say? And where am I trying to move people? And so that's always been a work in progress. And then my 10 years at North Point really kind of paused. I would speak here and there. I would do different things, but it just wasn't a focus. And it's still not, honestly, a focus. It's just becoming more part of
Did you
doing.
Focus on the tech behind the scenes production side because it was easy for you and it didn't stretch you and push you out in that deep end where you're not as confident?
I think just because I loved it.
Okay.
And I was good at it. Yeah. I think one of I write this in the book, but at one of the places I left, the pastor looked at me, or the leader looked at me, and he said, if you're not successful in your next venture, it's probably just your personality. Don't blame the organization. Yeah, that's straight up what he said. And but
what?
Yeah.
Why would he say that to you?
Because we were wired so differently that he saw my unstructured wiring as just not a good leadership quality. And what's funny is the assessment I love to use is called Right Path, and what it talks about is structured versus unstructured in this kind of attribute thing. Well, the structured side is precise, organized, and achieving. So cross the T's, dot the I's, you know where things go, order. The other side, though, where I'm really high, which I am not high in precise, organized, and achieving, is generalist, improviser, and instinct. Well, the very things that drove him crazy about me and created a chemistry issue between the two of us are the very things that made me a good producer of events. I don't I don't get rattled at events.
Yeah.
Like people are always like at our events, they're like, y'all seem so calm because I'm alive. Like this is like one of my favorite, like when something goes wrong, it doesn't rattle me. It just sends me into a different place and allows me to do that. So what's been neat is over the last 12, 13 years to be able to take that moment, which was a really hard moment in the time, but has become foundational for the way I try to lead. And I try to call that uniqueness out in the people that I lead, which is going, you know, because that was a uniqueness of mine that was in a sense being said, it's not good and you're not going to be a leader. And it became the thing that actually put me in the position that I'm in now, which was I produced events and I was good at it.
So Catalyst had a change in ownership or a few times over the last 15 years, and then leadership, and then you were asked to join and lead the organization, and you stepped into basically an old business model.
Yeah.
And you've been there 4 years now.
No.
5.
6.
No.
Yes.
That's not true.
I came over for a year.
2012?
Yeah. I came over for years, the creative director, and to also develop the staff culture, a healthy staff culture.
I remember that year.
Yeah. And then a year later is when
Didn't you fire everyone?
No. The year later, maybe, because that's when I took it for Brad.
Right.
So I was there a year, and then so I've been leading it for 5 years now, which is hard to believe.
And how have things changed?
Oh, man. I'll say this. One of the main things that even when I took the job at North Point, I remember telling Julie Arnold, who was hiring me, I said, Julie, I'll be a service programming director is what we call that role. I said, but I'm a pastor first. If that's okay, then this will work for me. In other words, I'll do this specialized area, but I'm going to do it in a pastoral way. That's the only way I know, you know.
What does that mean?
To me, what that means is it's relationship over results necessary. Now, I'm not saying it's this drastic difference, but I want to figure out what's my highest metric, which for me is I don't want to walk past the people that we exist to serve while I'm doing a project.
Are you talking about the congregation or your
It's
staff?
ministry, yeah. I mean, the church is the people. Like, that's the whole point. And if I'm so busy with doing the work of the church, I'm going to miss pastoring and loving on the people. To me, that's just an important piece of this. And it's the same way I try to lead my team and that sort of thing. And what I think is your results actually get way better when you're able to love on and care for the people around you and that you entrust, or that are entrusted to you, and you steward them well. So I remember, though, I came for a few years, and I was producing the event for a few years, and really in a lot of the heyday of Catalyst was huge, and it was all over the country and really exploding. I would say I was coming right on the edge of that curve when it had...
On the downswing?
On the downswing a little bit. And one of the things I remember was there was a lot of conversation around the wow moments, which were really the
stupid stunts.
The carnival acts.
Yeah,
and they
world's largest pillow fight.
Yeah, I mean, that was what Catalyst built. You know, but Catalyst also was built out of the attractional model of the church. Willow Creek, North Point, you know, like when Catalyst started 19 years ago, North Point was 2 years old. And that's when the attractional model had just really gotten root in the evangelical church, and it started exploding. In other words,
when you say the attractional model, you're talking about like the seeker-friendly thing?
Seeker-friendly, but let's create an experience so the unchurched wants to be here. Then we can, so seeker-friendly.
So more of a focus on
attractional,
you know, production value. And,
for sure. And then the way North Point's always said it is a church that unchurched people like to attend. That's the way they've always tried to describe it.
Gotcha.
It's not a surprise that Catalyst came right, because Andy's obviously been a part of it from day one.
Right.
It came right along with that same model. And
interesting.
And so the experience piece of Catalyst was not a surprise. But if you add it on top of the fact that it was always built for next generation leaders, so that 25 to 35 year old.
Okay, so let's talk about that. We were there for a number of years, and this is not, I mean, we are very good friends with previous leaders of Catalyst.
Correct.
Okay.
Still.
So, yeah, still.
I know, me too.
And so this is not an indictment of anybody who was on that team, led that team, on that stage, nothing.
Right.
It felt to me over the years like, I would say unfocused would be a word.
Right.
They would say, we're doing this, we're reaching this group. Yeah. And then I'm kind of looking around going...
And that's not who's there.
Not really.
Yep.
And like, why do we keep saying something that we can all see isn't true?
Yep.
And then like...
And where's the intentionality around it?
And then we're doing pillow fights, and then you're having really high impact, spiritual content, and then you're having stupid stunts and carnal, and and then you have like non-believers on say, like, who's this for?
Totally.
And it felt like unfocused to me. And all of the individual experiences, except maybe some of the stupid stunts, were like individually good. But when it kind of came together, right, it was kind of like, what is this? And who's it for?
Yeah. So, and I'm a journey guy. That's where I came. I mean, I come from creating a journey. And so one of the things I remember telling Brad when I just came on staff, or even when I was contracting, I was like, it feels all over the place, a little schizophrenic in the programming. And what I found out was one of the ways that there were two major things that happened for me. Number one was, we kind of flipped the script a little bit. From the first day I took over was when it came to programming our events. Number one, Lord, what do you want us to talk about? What are you calling us in a sense to? What's the felt need? What's the thing that you want us to address? Before we booked a speaker, before we knew what was going on. Is
that the tagline, like belong or the whatever?
The theme this year is fully alive. Right. What is it we feel like the Lord was wanting us to talk about? Then who are the best voices for that conversation?
To speak into that.
Correct. Because what I realized when I first inherited Catalyst was I got lots of emails on a consistent basis from people that everybody knows, people that, are in the public eye, saying, hey, I've got a book coming out this fall. I've got this, that, and the other. And that's how it used to get booked. And then
it was known. I mean, it was literally known that like the people on the stage, it's just that publisher paid the most.
Yeah, and that wasn't the case necessarily. That was not how it was booked. But what I meant was, now there was a year where there was a publisher that paid to kind of create a theme, and that was a complete disaster, and that's another story. But that's not, authors aren't getting booked because publishers spent money. That it was based on just, hey, well, they're going to draw. What's the sizzle that comes with that? The problem was then we would bring the theme on the backside and go, how can we create something that covers the multitude of these people? I just flipped that. And I was going, no. We have to be so intentional with the conversation over 2 days that nobody's questioning where it's coming from. And none of these speakers are going to come out of left field. That was a big thing for me. The second one was more of that where I was going with the pastoral piece. I remember sitting in the arena the first 5 years ago, a few weeks ago. And because I believe this, Cameron, like when you hire people here at Relevant, you're going to have a DNA fit. That's what you're looking for. And if somebody's DNA doesn't fit that, it doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make you wrong. It just means it's not a good fit.
No, they're wrong.
It makes them wrong, but not you. For me, I sat in the arena the first year I'd taken over. Brad was still leading at that time. We were transitioning then. And I remember sitting in the room.
You got to be careful when you say that you were transitioning that year. Just FYI.
To leadership.
Oh, gotcha.
And I remember thinking, Lord, and this was I just felt like it was a very clear conversation I had in prayer with the Lord. If you want me to steward a movement, steward this thing, and I really see it as that way. It's not an ownership thing. It is, I'm going to steward this platform for as long as God calls me to do it, and then I'm going to hand it off, hopefully better than I found it. If you want me to steward the carnival experience heavy Catalyst, I don't think I can do that. I don't think I'm the right guy for that. I like fun, trust me. Like I want that ingrained in the journey.
We'll see tonight.
That's fair. I might even have to get a Magic shirt. I was trying to debate.
Oh, we'll do that.
Because you see, the Magic and the Hawks, there's no rivalry there.
No, because you're not being unfaithful.
None of us are good.
It's not like you're flying American Airlines instead of Delta.
Oof, that would be tough.
Yeah, you're good.
But I do remember sitting there, Cameron, and I think this is probably what you and I have talked about multiple times, but I remember sitting there going, Lord, but if you want me to steward a movement of spiritual leaders so that they learn something to be better on Monday and they meet with their Heavenly Father, I can do that. Because I feel like that's the two things they need more than anything. The experience is fun, and the experience can draw. But if the experience has no base of content or, spiritual moments or connection with their Heavenly Father, I just feel like it's all for naught. My heartbeat is
because if it's just a leadership resource that the attendees are investing in, there's actually more cost-effective reader sources.
Yeah, totally, 100%.
And so the what's unique about coming should be an encounter.
You can't replicate that. You just can't. People ask me all the time, they're like, are the big events going away? And I'm like, I don't think so, because you can't replicate a gathering online. You just can't.
Tell Judah Smith that.
Well, he's doing that with his church, isn't he? Yeah. I know. It's pretty bad. Hey, but let's see. Like, that's what's fun about it. Yeah. Let's see. But for us, I want them in the room together. I want to experience this together. And we're not trying to do something every Sunday. We're a couple times a year. But for me, these leaders are leading 363 days a year. This is the 2 days a year they're not in charge. Our job is to just take them on a journey, hopefully learn something that makes them steward their leadership better, or their influence better, and it really makes them reconnect with the one who called them to do what they're doing anyway. Because I think we all get so busy that we miss that. So I had that conversation with God 5 years ago, and I just felt like, and actually that's what that's what the next book is going to be about. Is it's called Inheriting Influence: How to Lead People, Places, and Possibilities You Didn't Start. Because there's so many people that inherit something, a team, a job description, a label, or whatever. How do you do that? And a big part for me in talking about Brad, is how long did I honor Brad and what he had done for the 8 years leading up to me, but not being crippled by that feeling of, well, it was always this is what people love, this whatever. So how do you honor the past without being crippled by the past?
He inherited what was created prior to him.
Exactly. So, and to Brad's credit, he really grew like crazy.
Yeah.
But he and I are very different leaders. Mm-hmm. And
who's better?
He's a better horseback rider.
That's true.
Because I've never ridden a horse, so he wins that one. That's what I love, man, is he and I are different.
Yeah.
That's it. And I feel like he was the better leader for that season, and I'm the better leader for this season. I think that's how God does that. So
what I noticed,
you can't answer that because then you can't.
No, that's the right answer. It is the right answer. I mean, what Brad's doing now is different and significant, and you can see God's hand in the seasonal changes.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to Catalyst. Back starting in 2001, probably. Relevant was there for years and years, and honestly, there was I think the big challenge for events like Catalyst is been there, done that.
It is.
It's like, oh, we love it. It's great.
I've never met anybody that doesn't believe in it or want it to be successful. They just don't come anymore.
They just don't come.
Right.
And how do you fight that? What do you do? And that's where I felt like the big stunts felt desperate.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, but this year you don't want to miss this crazy thing.
Right.
And it's just kind of like, no, that's not why I'm going.
I think the alternative, the solution to that is substance.
Right.
I think if you create something that people go, it moved me.
Yeah.
I won't miss that.
Right.
That makes more sense to me than, wow, that was fun.
Right. Because you can have different types of fun.
Yeah.
Spend fun money different ways.
Yeah. Because I remember, Cameron, we sat at Marlowe's first time I met you. And you'd come to Catalyst, and I think Jenny Allen had invited you to come up.
Yeah.
And we sat for about...
It'd probably been 3 or 4 years.
It'd been a few years.
I hadn't been there.
Right. And I remember you just stopped me and you were just like, this feels different.
It did.
It's different.
It still does too.
Yeah.
It's like, it feels like, it's interesting hearing you talking about the intentionality of how you're prayerfully programming it now. Right. It doesn't feel commercial anymore.
Right.
And I realize it's a massive business and there's a lot of money flowing around, but you don't feel it.
Right.
And it really does feel like a ministry emphasis, and it moves me when I go. It's powerful, man.
That's been the heartbeat, is to make it a ministry. That's why we've been trying to get in this nonprofit model for so long.
Yeah, talk about that. Like the commercialization of ministry is a massive tension. And I would say nobody inherited more of a commercial ministry thing than you.
That's true.
And I'm saying that as a for-profit media company
totally.
Doing Christian content.
Yeah.
I'm, unequivocally, I want to run a successful business.
Right.
But I want to have a massive impact for the kingdom. Yeah. And if you can toe that line, great. A lot of times the pendulum swings too far one way or the other,
I always struggle with it. When I first started, I asked Brad, I said, why are we for profit?
Right. What was the answer?
He didn't know.
Because he inherited it.
Right. Because at that time, we had 35 owners when he and I were there together.
I remember that transition.
It was terrible. Now,
because it was started by the Maxwell.
John Maxwell started 19 years ago, and so what I realized is it was just a part of Enjoy. It was a product.
Yeah,
it wasn't a thing.
I first encountered them. Maybe it was 2000. It was when Gabe Lyons and all them were still on staff.
Yep.
And they were still in the Maxwell building. Yeah. And the Maxwell books were everywhere. And then Catalyst was like the next gen.
Which was the whole goal. It was 40 and
for that massive traditional leadership organization.
Right.
And then it broke off.
Yep.
And
so that's why I think it was for profit, because it was just a product at the time. And then it kind of grew in its own, and it was under a for-profit wing. And as you just eloquently said, I don't think for-profit's bad at all. As a matter of fact, I love it. Like, it's great. For-profit brings a motive. It attaches a motive, regardless, which is we got to be profitable.
Well, the thing that I think for-profit does in a good way is you have to be excellent. And the thing you're creating...
If not, you're done.
You're right. The consumers you're trying to serve, like, if you're not excellent in providing value to them, they will not transact with you. In the nonprofit world, you can be crap.
Right.
As long as one benefactor wants you to exist.
Which is 100% not our goal.
Right.
The reason I fought so hard for the nonprofit space is twofold. Number one, 90% of our attendees would think we're nonprofit. When they find out it's for-profit, it's not wrong, but there was always this that's interesting. Not because it's a bad thing, but because they just assume something else. That was not the main reason. The main reason for me was we had 35 owners. Our highest metric was revenue, and it should be in a for-profit. Like, that's what you're fighting for. They loved the mission as long as it made money. Again, which it should be in the model. What we're trying to create is a nonprofit model, and there's a whole lot more backstory to this. So that's the high. My heartbeat was, can impact be the highest measurement? Now, revenue has to be really close to that. It cannot, we can't go impact and then
I think
a little bit of revenue.
The difference of what we face and what you inherited was, or the 35 owners, was those are investors,
shareholders
to make profit,
100%.
Whereas like a visionary
which is not
founder,
wrong, and that's
correct, is more holistically minded and wants impact more than.
So, and when you think about a church ministry, a church is built, yes, on giving and those sorts of things, but the church is built to serve. It is built to impact the community. Mm-hmm. Most for-profit businesses, that's not necessarily how they think. They're not thinking, let's impact as many and as deeply as we can. For me, what I wanted to do was, what would it look like? An example is we'd had 40 countries ask us to come to Catalyst internationally. But our for-profit model and the money we had to make this whole engine work, we can't do that in Kenya and charge $1.99. But we could go to Kenya and underwrite some of it, and charge $10 because that could be a really valuable thing. Now, I'm not saying we're doing that, but it just was, my wheels were spinning of, let's see if there's a way to get this in. And now the trick to moving for-profit to nonprofit is you've got ownership and equity. So who wants to give up an engine that brings in significant amount of revenue? So I started praying about that about 4 years ago, and there's been, I don't think I would have expected it to play out the way it has, but as we sit here, we're really now set up to be a board-run ministry. And what I say that is, we don't have to go raise money to operate. That's not the goal. What it does is it protects the profit to go back to the mission. That was the heartbeat.
So before, because it was an investment,
correct.
If there was margin,
it's gone.
It was taken back to the investors,
correct.
Which is how
or
the
other
run.
The other parts
or
of
the other businesses, right?
Yes.
And so now the money stays within the organization.
Correct.
And you guys don't have to.
We don't have to
subsidize.
No, we won't have to at all. Because we've always been of revenue. That's what's unique about being a nonprofit model with a revenue engine. Because a lot of them don't have that. A lot of the reasons that
Are you going to start taking up an offering at Catalyst?
A few. One for relevant.
I'll take that.
See, you seem open to it. But even back to that commercialization thing, I remember one year as a producer, I went up to the leadership team and I said, hey, you guys are paying me to be here, but if you ask me for one other thing, I don't know that I'm going to sit around. This is like Friday at lunch. But it's because it had I think there were 7 asks at that point, and every one of them were like these deep spiritual moments of, give to compassion, do this, that, and the other. Well, for me, and it goes back to, I really am praying over the next 10 years that we could create a whole new model, even for sponsorships for that matter. What if, now that we're a nonprofit, what if we could figure out a way to cast vision to enough investor type folks, people that give to these type of organizations, to where we could go pick 5 major sponsors, Compassion, Convoy of Hope, some of these people we work with. And instead of them paying us to be there, we've raised the money. And now we can stand in front of people and go, hey, we've picked 4 or 5 organizations that we're all in on. As a matter of fact, they didn't pay a dime to be here. We raise the money so that we can give that to them and support. Like, what if we were, instead of being the catalyst, we were a catalyst for change? We were a catalyst to connect the right organizations. You know what I mean? Like, that's a little bit more of what I'm trying to do, is create a true, and we're going to gather together, be inspired. We're going to do those things, but there's so much more that can happen.
How much could y'all, I mean, because like you hear about like Passion in a day raises $8 million for A21,
right?
Whatever. Like, how much are you thinking could be raised?
I think ours is a totally different model.
Okay.
It's not going to be an offering at an event. Ours is working with businessmen and women, family foundations. Well, my prayer is that God would help us endow it so that we don't even have to worry. Like, what if somebody wrote us a $10 million check and allowed us to create new events? What if we could come to cities? I keep having this picture of what if we came to 10 major cities, pick those. And instead of anybody paying for anything, or, like, we've got enough money because it's been given, it's been donated, whatever that looks like, or we make it in our current events, and to go to 10 major cities 2 or 3 times a year, gather young leaders and just invest in them. Literally, just, I mean, I know Atlanta does creative mornings, and there's different things in different cities.
Oh, that kind of a model. I guess not like a conference.
No, not like a conference. 100 people.
Yeah.
But we're going to get together for a half a day or an evening, and we're going to talk about issues. We're going to talk about what's going on in the church. We're going to talk about leadership. What does that look like? Well, if I could underwrite all that, are you kidding me? How awesome would that be, able to build these little communities of catalyst leaders, these young leaders who are bought into to doing life a little different, to serving people in a different way. So those are the kind of things. But being able to underwrite projects versus having to go create a for-profit, a model that creates revenue consistently. The good thing is our big events, if we do them right and we're able to get the people we need to and market it right and do the stuff, they're by far going to bring in enough revenue to do all the things we want to do. We've just been in a unique ownership situation for a while now. We've had to scrap out of that a little bit, but I'm pretty excited about the ability to be able to change the model. And I think, because a lot of people still watch us in the conference space and they're going, wow, if they figured out a new way to do sponsorship model, people would follow suit. And it could really help the commercialization of that.
How do you feel about, I mean, it's got to be hard that you inherited a model, an event business, on the downswing of the deep. And I've gone the last 4 or 5 years, and every year is phenomenal. And I look around and I see fewer and fewer people there.
Right.
Is that discouraging?
In some ways, but some of that's on us. Some of that, we literally in the last few weeks have just decided to do a complete marketing reset.
Do you know why the numbers are down? Do you have feedback of
So over the last 6 years, it depends on where West Coast is not that way.
Right.
West Coast has stayed sold out for the last 3 or 4 years. As a matter of fact, we've turned it, but we've turned it back to sold out. It was not for a little while.
Right.
Atlanta is its own animal, because we started, when Atlanta was at 11,000, 12,000 people in the round, full, that was it. That was the only event we did in a year.
Yeah, now there's Orange and there's...
Well, not that, but even Catalyst. We cannibalized ourselves. We did 5 one-days a year. We would go, so people are going, wait, I can pay $100 to come to the one in my city for a one-day event. Get Andy and Craig. Yeah. Or I have to drive down, and more 2 nights of hotel. Right, 2 nights of hotel, bring my team. It's more expensive. I think that was one hurdle we had to jump through. I think the other big thing, Cameron, is exactly what you described, which was, I think people got confused going, who's it for? What is it? Like, I'm kind of over the Lions and the whatever. One of the things I noticed really early on was we always said, and you alluded to this, we always said we were for the next generation. But there wasn't really a great plan in place to make sure that funnel stays full.
And it's tough for the next generation to pay $200 to go to a 2-day
fact. And again, it goes back to another reason of going, is there a way to offset some of this and bring more leaders? We've started doing $99 for college students, for students. How can we do maybe I would have loved to do more than that, but we're just having to figure that out with the model. So the way I described it is, when my kids are, your kid is in elementary school as well. The elementary school is not thinking when fifth graders graduate, where we're going to get there's just a funnel in place because kids are born, whatever. Your kindergarten class is coming. Mm-hmm. One of the struggles I think we've had is we continue to graduate, quote unquote, catalyst leaders. They're age-wise. They move out of that 25 to 40-year-old kind of age bracket that we try to program through and focus on. They move out, but we haven't had a system in place that brings the next group of 25-year-olds. So next year, with the 20-year anniversary, we're really we're trying to pray through, Lord, how do we throw an anchor in the next 20 years so that we can continue? Because, 20 years is kind of loosely described as a generation. So I kind of feel like we've raised a group of leaders for 20 years. What we want to do is start telling anybody, if you're over the age of 40 and you come to Catalyst, we want you to bring 2 people and pay for them that are 25 to 35.
So you're assuming this person over 40 has an extra $400.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't, we got to figure that out. But the point is an intentionality around, and then what would it look like if we created some content that helps them for the next 12 months disciple those, some sort of mentoring, discipleship, just investment. I don't care what you call it, whatever you want to call it. But I want to get intentional about the next generation handing it off appropriately. The next, the leaders a season ahead going, I want to make sure I'm always investing. And I think one of the things
who's your Timothy sort of thing.
Right. I think we can leverage that.
Bob Goff said, 5s need to invest in 3s, so 50s invest in 30s, 4s need to invest in 2s, and 3s need to invest in teens.
Yeah.
And everybody has somebody that they should be leading and mentoring in something. So
it is hard. I mean, if your subscriptions goes down for a season, it feels weird. I think the reason that for me, there's been so many other extracurricular things that are discouraging that we've had to walk through. And so I've been able to go with all that going on, and we still have these numbers in a good way. I see it in a little bit of a different light.
So for us, those subscription numbers go down because technology changes, media consumption habits change, and millennials are transient, and they don't want paper mailed to a permanent address. And we could say, we're a magazine publisher and just dig our heels in and die. Or we could just go, no, we want to create content that impacts you, and I don't care how or what device or what way you want to engage us on. And we have to step back and go, well, why are we publishing content printed on paper and mailing it? That is literally the most inefficient way that I could communicate with you. We're still doing it,
right? But
it is the smallest thing we do.
Yeah.
It was like back in 2012, I had to rethink, no, we're not a magazine publisher. We were reaching 750,000 people a month if you added up all of our platforms back then. What would we be doing to reach 10 million a month that we're not doing now?
Right.
Because I'm more impact minded.
Right.
And so we had to completely
you overhauled the thing.
And every 3 years, it used to be every 5 years.
Yeah.
We'd have to basically shut down our business and start a different one.
Right.
And now it's speeding up, and it's more like every 2 or 3 years. We're in the middle of this again.
Yeah, I can see that.
And so it's we can't we are Catalyst and come to a big room and be together. But what if tastes change, budgets change, and people don't want to do that?
Yeah.
What does an event company do? Or is it that you're a leadership development company and that there's other things you guys...
Yeah,
is that the questions you're asking?
And that's the tension we constantly wrestle with. And honestly, in next year, we're scaling back and just going to do East and West right now.
No one days.
Nope, for that very reason.
Are you guys going to get into other resources and stuff?
We already do. I mean, we've had a podcast for years. Yeah. We've never been able to put money in it or really...
Yeah, Brad had me on it once back in 2007.
Yeah?
That's about it.
Maybe we should remedy that, Cameron.
I was one of 3 people
with Ken Coleman and in that little office space.
No, it was just Brad.
Was this at the event?
No, I was in my office.
Okay.
Just Skyped me in or whatever.
Yeah. Well,
we're a long time ago.
We do, and that's we try to create content consistently or aggregate as well. I mean, that's a big part
curator.
of it. Yeah. So we're doing that, but honestly, I think the times that I've seen Catalyst struggle over the last 6, 7, 8 years being involved is when we've gotten a little bit our hands in too many cookie jars. Oh, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this, we should do this. We should create a CD project. We should create this, that, and the other.
We should do a publishing imprint. We should do...
Right. And for me, where we've been at our best is when we were focused on the couple things we're best at. And right now, we're really good at events. That's always been a sweet spot of ours.
What does it look like in 5 years and 10 years?
I don't know. I really don't. I think what we're trying to do right now.
You don't have like a 5-year like gut dream that freaks you out?
A little bit. It's a little bit of what I was talking about of creating these smaller gatherings that are consistent, that are really
Building
going
community.
deep with people, with community. I think that's how we're going to grow Catalyst again and get people, the next generation, to know about it. When I first got here, Brad had done an amazing job of creating, especially West Coast, because what they did, they were really smart about creating the West Coast event, is LV, and they took this van around the country. I don't know if you remember the van again, but they created a community out there that was ready to be a core group for that. We weren't bringing the Atlanta event on the road.
So you're just doing a church model of small groups being the real church, and then let's get together.
And gather. Yeah, that's what you do. Like, you gather people, and then hopefully once or twice a year you get everybody together.
Wait, are you the pastor of Catalyst?
Well, that's how we were going.
Wait a second. You're nonprofit. You're doing small groups. You're gonna.
If people want to start giving, then yes, I'll be the pastor.
Passion launched a church.
That's
Wait
a
a second.
I
think I know your 5-year plan.
One hot minute. I don't think that's the 5-year plan. But I do think a huge part of that for us is a refocus on how do we really go deep with millennial, with Gen Z, and make sure that they get an understanding of why stewarding their influence or leadership matters. For me, it's all about the fact, it comes back to the simple thing that how we lead affects people's faith. It just does. I know guys that can preach the lights off the wall. I don't even think that makes sense.
Nope.
The lights off the ceiling or the paint off the wall.
Paint off the wall. I think is what you're.
That's what I was going for.
Lights out.
Lights.
They can preach lights out.
Which your magic's going to be tonight. I feel like it.
Against the new look 76ers with Jimmy Butler, I do not have hopes that we're going to be the better team tonight.
It's going to be interesting. But I know guys that can preach, the paint off the wall. But who they are Monday through Friday doesn't represent that same person. And for me, how we lead as faith leaders, it is so critical. And if young leaders can get a hold of that and recognize that what they say on, what their Sunday experience looks like, if it's not integrated in their lives, I think one of the things, Cameron, but one of the things I've always appreciated about you is your conviction to what you're called to do. But more than that is how your faith has become, it's integrated in your day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. It just is. That's not the case with most leaders. A lot of leaders, man, it's just like, here's what, I can do this and I can do this. But it's like the Holy Spirit and integration doesn't necessarily play in when I'm having a conversation with my kids or when I'm integrating or talking to my staff.
Dude, when I'm spiritually healthy,
it changes everything.
It's weird that, oh, wow, the business is healthy. And when I'm spiritually not healthy,
yes.
Oh, all of a sudden things are really hard and the culture here is struggling.
But you know this, I don't know anybody, and I'm sure there are, but I don't know anybody that's walked away from Jesus because of Jesus.
Wow.
But I know a lot of people who have lost faith because of those of us that represent Jesus. That's why this matters to me, because how we lead affects people's faith. And if you can, at 25 years old, get a grasp of that, it would just be such a catalyst for an incredible career, a incredible calling, an incredible life. That's why it matters to me. And it matters to me because the 40-year-olds and the 50-year-olds also, same thing. We've got to be healthy. We've got to be whole leaders who understand the weight of our influence. That's a big deal. And especially because we represent something bigger than ourselves. And I'm not saying that those that don't have faith in Jesus don't have a representation, but that is a part of the calling of falling under being a follower of Jesus, is we are representing something more than just our name and ourselves. We are representing a kingdom and Jesus, and that's a big deal. And I think so many of us can talk about it, and so many of us can talk about it on Sunday specifically, and then on Monday it looks very different. We've got these multiple personalities, and faith is just different in those different. I know a ton of people, their work personality is very different than the rest of their life. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because you get work mode, you do this.
Sounds like you are saying that's a bad thing.
What I'm saying is, the Cameron that's in this office is the Cameron I know that comes and hangs out at our event, is the Cameron I'm going to go to the game with.
Yeah.
You do different things in all those venues, but integrity is consistency. I want to know what I can expect. And so that's why all this matters to me. I don't know how long I'll do it. I love it though.
Do you think you're a I mean, you know the gut answer to this. Is this you were called to come in, to transition it and to set a new course and then hand it off? Or are you the launcher of a new era that you're going to see it through? Like a BCAD thing. Are you the AD leader?
I'm not a starter in general.
Entrepreneur? Well, you are, because you just started it as a nonprofit. I mean, so is it a thing of like you're the change agent and you're walking?
That's more of my speed. No. Like, I've asked the Lord to release me, I can't tell you how many times this summer because of other stuff that's been going on.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be. Like,
yeah.
I do want to see it. I want to see it.
You just said on tape that you've asked the Lord to release you because of other things going on. Are you primarily referring to like how difficult it was with the business transition?
Yes, I had a difficult.
I just want to be clear that it wasn't like my major porn addiction.
No,
that kind of
no moral failures, nothing like that. We've had a transition in ownership that's been really
very
hard.
difficult.
Very difficult.
I knew that. I just want to make sure people didn't misconstrue what you said.
And there's just been times that it was too much for me to handle.
It's not why you signed up for this.
Correct.
Yeah.
If I didn't believe that I wanted to be a part of this for a long time, I wouldn't have stayed.
But I mean, there are leaders who are called and gifted at
and that very well
turning something around.
That very well could be the case.
And then handing it off.
Yeah, and so it could be. I'm very open-handed with it. I'm like, Lord, if you call me in a year to hand it over to this group,
you do have a nice new website. You're getting a lot of speaking engagements. You're got a new book deal. You're setting yourself up.
All those things. There you go. I mean, that's fine if that's what God calls me to do next. I like having a home base, though. Yeah. I'm an investor. I like taking people. I mean, Cameron, the truth is, we've had to let a significant amount of staff go this year. We've helped find every one of them, with the exception of one right now, a new job.
And I can actually say publicly that I know you were doing this because you hit me up about one of yours.
Right.
Like,
literally, they've all found jobs that are better
there, and
that's brutal because these are my friends. But
why were y'all letting people go? Is it just to turn the organization?
We're just resetting some stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's just some overhead and different things when you look at going. If we're going to scale back and just do 2 events next year,
right?
You don't need this. You don't need as many people as we had when we were doing 10 events.
Yeah.
And going through this transition, we want to just get as nimble and flexible as we can.
Yeah, smart.
Into a new business.
You don't have offices?
No.
Is that long term? Is that going to be long term?
I think we'll be a little bit of a hybrid because we have a church that we gather at once or twice a week as a staff, just get together so we can see each other. And then we work remote the rest of the time.
Is that working?
Yeah, so far.
How do you create culture via email?
Well, we created it before, so that's why. But
I'm the same way. I'm here, right? I want everybody here to collaborate. We have 2 or 3 people that work in other states.
Right.
And I would not hire somebody in another state, but they were here in core and here for years.
The DNA's there.
And then they went on, and it's like, no, we need to stay connected and working together.
Well, and that's what I was trying to. My point was that this team, they wouldn't have stayed if we hadn't invested in them. They wouldn't have stayed if we hadn't created culture. They wouldn't have stayed because it's been too hard. There's just been too many hard things in this transition that young leaders they'd find something else if they didn't believe in me, if they didn't believe in our team, if they didn't believe in the mission, what we're trying to do. And so that's why it very well could be that God's using me to keep it together, transition it into a nonprofit, into a new ministry type direction. And in a year, I go do something else. Here's the reason it doesn't bother me either way, is this thing doesn't define me. It doesn't. When I was at North Point, when I left, I'd been there about a decade, and this guy comes up to me. He knew I was leaving. He's an older guy. He came from business world into North Point, and he said, Tyler, do you know what you're doing? And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, why would you leave this place? He's like, this is like the utopia of workplaces. And I said, well, it's not to me, because this place doesn't define me. I'm Tyler. And wherever I'm at, that vocation, whatever that title is, that's not a definition for me. The only thing I ever want, Cameron, on my tombstone is father, husband, and friend. That's it. I don't want author. I don't want catalyst. I don't want president. I don't want any of that. I just want to be a good dad, a great husband, and a great friend. Because to me, the vocation is a piece of that equation, the title of that. But I would rather be known as your friend than the guy that runs Catalyst. That matters more to me. And I think, so that's why I hold it very loosely. And I'm like, God, if I'm done at the end of this year, okay, I'll hand it, but what I don't want to do is hand it when it's not ready.
Do you think that you view it like that because you didn't start it? You're stewarding it for now. Like it's easier for you.
The founder, I don't have that founder piece.
Yeah, the founding pastor.
I would pray. I can see why that's harder. I mean, like relevant. If you were to hand it off.
Oh, over the years, I would have gladly many, many times.
But this is.
But prayerfully, I did. I mean, I was willing to. There were offers.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things that it was like Abraham and Isaac. It was like the Lord just stopped me in my tracks.
But
like, not yet.
This is your DNA. This place was built off of the way the way you're wired, the way you think, and those sorts of things. And Catalyst wasn't. It is more now.
Yeah.
Because it just takes on the personality of the people leading it. It's just what it does. What I also know though is like, and even back to the equation or the question about speaking and being on stage, and I don't do it. I don't get up there because I'm like, hey guys, put me here, put me here, put me here. I don't book myself at all for our 2-day experience. The team, I give it to them, and I go, whatever you think is best, because they know how little I want to be on the stage in terms of just to be seen. I want it to be strategic moments of vision and pastoring. That's it. That's what, when I go up there, that's what I should do. Where are we going? And then care for the people that are in the room for a minute. One of the most consistent compliments we've gotten over the last really 4 years is it seems so intentional and we feel pastored or loved. I had a friend who hadn't come in years. And he came 2 years ago, and he said for 2 days, because he hadn't come because he was just frustrated with the last time he left. He's like, I felt like you were taking from us. Mm-hmm. He said, I, for 2 days, sat, and I felt like for 2 days you guys poured into me.
Yeah, and it does feel like that.
Well, that matters to me. That's why we're doing it. I want life to flow into those leaders, not be taking from them for 2 days. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think one of the most difficult things, that's why I'm going to do a bunch of case studies in this new book of people that have taken over somebody else's platform or.
It's such an interesting.
Whatever.
And that's the majority. I mean, this is it's a very entrepreneurial generation. Everybody's a maker. Everybody's starting things. But the reality is most of those will come and go.
Right.
And eventually, as you progress in your career, you're going to be part of something bigger than yourself.
No question.
Instead of running the thing you started with.
Well, they say in 2020, it's 40% of the economy is going to be the gig economy. So 40% of the population will be freelancers or contractors that have 3 or 4 organizations they work with. If you don't figure out how to lead into a new organization where you got to learn the culture, you got to learn, it's a big deal that you understand it's not your influence. You're inheriting something else that somebody else created. How do you do that well? Mm-hmm. The other huge thing that we're watching is these massive churches that they're the lead pastor, the founding pastor, the whatever, they're retiring. And they've got to transition well, and they're not. So what can we do?
About Willow?
No, I'm just talking churches in general.
Yeah.
I want to interview like Judah. Like his dad passed away, but he was about to hand it to him. Mm-hmm. People throughout, that have taken over for moral failure, that have taken over. Buzz Williams is a friend of mine. He's the head coach at Virginia Tech basketball. Well, I want to interview him. Like you took over a team that wasn't yours. You didn't recruit a single one of those players. You didn't do that. What did you learn as you did that? I heard Dan Mullen say when he came to Florida, he said, those players did not sign up for me. Mm-hmm. I signed up for them. Now I have to go get them on my team. Well, that's a healthy way to view that. Not, it's my team now. If you want to play, this is how, it's just you got to go in. It's different than when you start something.
The coaching thing is interesting. Aaron Gordon on the Magic has had, in his 4 years, 4 different head coaches.
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a little problematic.
That can be a little bit of a struggle. But I do think it's much harder when you're the founder. I've watched organizations, I've been on boards for organizations where the founder, how do you do this well?
Yeah, how do you? I'm trying to, as you're talking, I'm literally trying to think of like major ministries that have handed it generationally,
to something else,
to the next generation. Even
I think
your own Andy Stanley. He didn't inherit his dad's church.
No, he started a new one.
Right, he started his new one,
yeah.
And then I'm really trying to think of transition. And my family started a big Christian publishing company.
Right.
My dad's the founder. They're in their mid-60s. I'm not going to take over their thing. I started my own thing.
Right.
And it's like, I didn't know until a few years ago that was always in the back of their mind, that they assumed that I would take over their thing.
Yeah.
And finally, like, they realized I wasn't. And then we had a very difficult conversation.
Right.
And I had no clue.
I think that's a huge key to this, though, is communication on the front end. Because had you been brought into the conversation earlier, had you been talked through and you were consulted on it, I have a really good friend who was second in line at this big church, teaching pastor, campus pastor, like doing these things. And I think it was just it was common knowledge that he would be the next guy, right? Except for him. Nobody had talked to him about it. Mm-hmm. There was no real conversation about, hey, we'd really like to put you in. All of a sudden, he gets called away to a new church.
Is that Darren Whitehead?
No.
Oh.
The church.
You say all these vague stories. I'm like, who's he talking about?
The church he went to is in Nashville, but he...
it is Darren Whitehead. Okay.
When he left, when he went to the senior leadership team and said, hey, guys, I'm taking this other job.
They were blindsided.
They were completely blindsided, and they looked at him and were like, whoa. We have a plan for you.
And they didn't tell him.
They never told him the plan.
I mean, when I had the conversation with my dad, it was incredibly difficult because it was my dad.
Right.
But I said to him, I'm not the guy, because, and I had to tell for over 3 hours over fish tacos, tell my dad that, like, listen, I mean, in media and church, you're only as good as your next article.
Right.
You're only as good as your next issue. And I'm not inherent. You need to find somebody who will continue the vision that you have created, because I see the world very differently.
Right.
I don't fit that mold. The next issue, the issue I would hypothetically put out would alienate all of your readers.
Right.
But because the brand is defined by what it is now, no new readers would come.
Yeah.
93% of the books you publish, I wouldn't. I would sell the office building from the suburbs and move downtown. I would let 4/5 of the staff go and hire new blood. I would dismantle. I would destroy your life's work.
Right.
I'm not the shepherd of it. Like, it's just a different vision, a different direction. That's the
thing. It's not that either one's wrong.
No.
It's just different.
There's a need for what they 100%. Do. There's a need for what I'm doing, and they don't go together.
Correct. And even when we talked about Brad's leadership for 8 years and my leadership for the last 5.
That yours is a lot better. That's what we determined, right?
It's just different. We're called for different seasons to do different things. But that's
so you're saying Brad is like my dad?
Yeah. Shoot. No, not in any way. But you know what I mean? I mean, it's just, that's the reality of these things. And I think you had wisdom in that, of recognizing, you know what? I don't want to do that to my dad.
No, I don't. I would feel terrible.
Right. And it was just cleaner to do this. And it gave you the freedom too, though, that you weren't having to go through layers of years of experience in a certain model and but I mean, again, Andy, and this is what we're walking through right now. Andy Stanley has always said this: you fall in love with the mission, you date the model.
Dating a model sounds great.
That's a good plan. That's truth. But I've been in buildings recently with older models of ministry and church or whatever, and I'm just like, and they're dying because they fell in love with a model, not a mission. And that's what we're trying to do, is make sure, God, what are the new wineskins? Because we keep putting new wine, but if it's the wrong model, Cameron, I'm very open. If God were to say, hey, the big events are gone, like, we're going to do a whole new thing. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Great.
I don't care.
Yeah.
What I care about is that we impact the next generation in some way, the emerging generation, and just leaders in general of the church. I think.
So let me get this straight, because this is how we've operated or tried to operate. Sometimes the Lord has to kind of, shake the baby to get my attention.
Right.
But so you're saying marry the mission, date the model. So you're telling me to date models.
Yes. That's what you need to know.
Okay. I just want to be clear. Yeah. As this is transcribed.
As we spend this entire time, what your key is dating a model.
Okay.
Number one from this conversation.
But marry the mission.
You should date a model. But it's a helpful practical tool
is good. That's
that
good.
says, and it helps you avoid mission drift, and it's what you've been doing, which is going every 3 years, guys.
You got to blow it up.
We got to, and the way you describe it is blowing up. It's like, but what you're describing is a fundamental model that has worked for a season that might not work anymore.
Right.
Are we willing? And it's what, dude, if anybody wants to know what to do with this, you read Henry Cloud's Necessary Endings book. He talks about pruning. And the hardest thing about pruning is not pruning away the dead things, it's pruning away the good things. Good things have emotion connected to them. Good things they were good. They work. They might even be best for a season, but right now they're good. The problem when you have good things and not best things is they're taking nutrients from the best things. And that's why it's so critical to not just cut away the dead things when you're doing like a rose bush or whatever. You have to cut away many of the good, branches so that the best branches are getting all the nutrients and all this. So that's what looking at the model consistently is going, is it really worth a magazine, a physical magazine? Is that what resource is it doing everything we want to do? If it is, great.
Right. But we have to
be willing to ask the question.
Yeah, but even aside from running an organization, I mean, pastors should be doing this continually.
Correct.
What ministries are thriving? What models are old and people aren't connecting with anymore? Who is it? Missionally, who is it we're trying to reach? And is what we're doing reaching them effectively?
Because do we know
the heartbeat and the pulse of the pipeline of the new people, or are we missing them because we're married to old methodology?
And I'll be honest, because you asked me the question, the 5-year. I don't know the answer yet, what the next generation really, we're as we're putting our board together and some of these other things, we're intentionally putting, 28-year-olds on that because I want to hear what they think because I'm not in that group anymore. Andy Stanley said it at Catalyst this year. He said, the next generation church is not going to be created by our generation. It's going to be created and led by the next generation. We're fools to think that we're going to be the ones to create that. So that's why we've got to get in the minds and the hearts of that group, our target audience, what that looks like. So I don't have a great answer for that, but I also know that I'm determined to figure out what it is and who to go figure that. I got to go find who those people are. But I can't be a bunch of me and you and Brad sitting around because
especially not Brad.
We're not that group, We're not that group. So, but yeah, man, I'm excited about the things to come in both parties. I love watching. I think social media drives me crazy a lot of times, but I love being able to keep up with what's going on in people's worlds and the way I know every time, every month when it's time to get the issue out. Or every 2 months.
Whenever I'm excited about the issue, I'll post about it. If there's kind of a dud,
well, the all-nighter. That's my favorite Insta stories when Cameron's all-nighter started showing up.
You see me slowly drift into delirium. Yeah. I start at 11. I'm all bright-eyed and perky, and then by around 4:30 in the morning, I'm like, I hate my life. Oh man, thanks for doing this. Congratulations on the new book. Next time you send a box full of moss, send a little brush, a little broom and dustpan or something.
Or we create it and we spray paint it with adhesive so it all stays together.
And then just pack it full of those packing peanuts. That would be good.
I bet next time it'll be an envelope with the book.
It's going to be an envelope full of confetti and glitter.
It'll just be the book with a note that says, hey, here you go. I can guarantee yours will be. That's for sure.
I like it. Well, thanks for joining me, man. Yep. This is great. Thanks.
Hey, if you like this episode of Unedited, I'd love your help spreading word about the show. Subscribing, rating, and reviewing it on iTunes helps a ton, as well as sharing it on social media. We have an incredible lineup of guests coming this season. You don't want to miss out. Well, I'm Cameron Strang. Thank you for listening. I promise I won't delete this episode after we post it. I'll see you next time.
Relevant Podcast Network.